At 5:58 in the morning, on Saturday, in a village in the mountains of eastern Indonesia, a 63-year-old priest was reading the gospel out loud. It was the 15th of August, the Assumption, a holy day of obligation, which is the reason a church was full at 6 in the morning on a weekend. The reading for that day is the Magnificat, Mary's song. He got as far as the line about the proud being scattered, and then the floor started. The roof of that church was a concrete slab. He knew that because he built it. He spent 11 years raising the money for it, and he drew it himself, and there was no engineer. They got the weight off him 1 hour and 50 minutes later. When they did, he stopped breathing, and his heart did not beat for 14 minutes. There is something you need to know about where this happened, because it is the reason this story exists at all. The island is called Flores. 2 million people. It sits inside the largest Muslim country on earth, and it is between 80 and 90% Catholic. It produces so many priests that people call it the Island of Priests. Some people call it the Little Vatican. So on Saturday morning at 5:58, an earthquake put the roofs down on an island where almost everyone was already inside a church. What Father Cornelis is saying today, 5 days later, he has not said to his bishop before he starts. This is a reconstruction. The earthquake is real, the numbers are real, and every one of them is sourced on screen. The man telling it is not a real person, and no real victim of this earthquake is shown, quoted, or identified here.
Wait, let me finish this one. Servus, with an S at the front and an S at the end. There, 215. Sorry, good afternoon. I'll explain the notebook later. And if I explain it now, it will sound like something it isn't. It's Thursday. It's about 4 in the afternoon. I'm sitting on a plastic chair in front of my church, and I'm going to keep saying my church, even though what is behind me is a slab lying on the ground at an angle. My niece is filming this on her phone. It's propped up on a water container. Nobody asked me to do this. There's no journalist here. There's no program. And the diocese does not know I'm doing it. I asked her this morning if she would hold the phone, and she said only if I sat down, because I'm not supposed to be standing for long. Before anything else, I want to say one thing, because I know what these stories sound like. I did not come back holy. I have heard about 400 confessions from people who nearly died. I know exactly how the story is supposed to go. A man dies, a man comes back, and now he is gentle and certain, and he forgives everyone, and he knows why he is here. That did not happen to me. I am the same difficult man I was on Friday. I still argue with my sacristan. This morning I was rude to a very kind woman from an aid organization for no reason at all. The only thing that changed is that I found out what I spent 37 years not doing. That's all. That's the whole thing. My name is Cornelis. Here you would call me Romo Cornelis. Romo is what we call a priest. It isn't a title. It's more like calling someone uncle. I'm 63. I was ordained in 1989, so this is my 37th year now. You are probably not from here, so I have to explain where here is, or none of the rest of it will land. This island is called Flores. It's in the east of Indonesia. 2 million people. And I want you to understand something about it that even most Indonesians find strange. Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world. There are more than 280 million people in it. And this island, this one, is between 80 and 90% Catholic. We make priests here the way other places make teachers. There are villages up in these mountains with 400 people in them that have sent 9 men to the seminary. There is a word people use for this island. They call it the Island of Priests. Some people call it the Little Vatican, which I have always thought was a slightly ridiculous thing to call a place where the road washes out twice a year. I am the 7th of 9 children. In a family like mine, in a village like mine, one of the boys goes. That is simply what happens. It is not a lightning bolt. It is not a voice in the night. My mother had 9 children, and one of them was going to go, and I was the one who was good at school and bad at carrying things, so it was me. I went into the minor seminary when I was 12 years old. 12. I want to say that plainly because in Europe or in America, if you say that, people make a face. Here it was the best thing that could happen to a boy. It meant food every day and a bed and books, and I was happy. I want that on the record before I complain about anything, because I am about to complain. I have had a good life and I have never once in 37 years been hungry. But there is something I have never said out loud, and I am 63, and last Saturday I found out I have less time than I thought. We were 14 men ordained together. One of them is a bishop now. 2 went to Rome. 5 went abroad as missionaries, which is a thing this island does. We export priests, we send them to Europe and to America to run parishes that ran out of their own men. I stayed. I have been in mountain parishes for 37 years, and in this one for 19. I have left this island exactly once for a course in Java in 1997. And every time somebody asks me about that, I say the same sentence. I say somebody has to be here. And I say it in a particular voice, and I have heard myself say it, and it is not a humble voice, it is the voice of a man presenting a bill. All right, the church. When I arrived in this parish in 2007, the church was wood and bamboo with a corrugated roof, and it was 90 years old and it leaned. When the wind came up the valley, the whole building moved. You could hear it. The old people said it breathed. And I hated it. It was patched with plastic sheet on one side. Bats got in. Rain came in on the altar in the wet season, and I would say Mass with water running down the back of my neck, and I would look at those people getting rained on inside a church, and I thought, this is what we give them. Everything these people have is temporary. Their houses, their income, the road, and the one building that is supposed to say something permanent to them leaks. So I decided to build one out of concrete. It took 11 years to get the money, 11. We sold coffee, we had raffles. I wrote to 5 organizations in Germany and got 2 replies and 1 check. But most of it came from young people from this village who went to work in Malaysia on plantations and building sites and sent money home. Some of them I never met because they left before I arrived, and they sent money anyway to a priest they had never seen for a building they would probably never sit in, and I drew it myself. I want to be very clear because this matters, and I am not going to soften it. There was no engineer. There is no engineer within 100 kilometers of here who would come for what we could pay. I drew it on graph paper in the presbytery with a ruler, and a man from the district who builds schools looked at it and said it was fine. And what I drew was a heavy concrete roof slab, flat, because flat is cheaper, sitting on columns that I now know were too thin. I made them thin because concrete is expensive, and I wanted the money to go into the roof because it was the roof that had always been the problem. You already understand what I am telling you. We finished it in 2024. The bishop came. He came all the way up the road and he blessed it, and there were 400 people in a building built for 250, and there was a goat and there was dancing outside until 11 at night. That was the best day of my life. I have not had a better one. And I am not going to pretend otherwise now just because of how it ended. Last Friday the 14th, we cleaned the church for the Assumption. I should explain that because I do not think people outside understand what the 15th of August is here. In most of the world, it is a date on a calendar. Here it is the biggest Marian feast of the year. It is a holy day of obligation, which means you are required to be at Mass. On this island that is not a technicality, people come. And because it is harvest season and people go up to the fields early, we said the first Mass at 6 in the morning. I woke up at 4:30. I remember being annoyed about something petty. The sacristan had put out the wrong vestments, green instead of white, and I made a comment about it that I have thought about every day since. By 10 to 6, the church was full. People standing at the back, people in the doorway. children on the floor at the front, because that is where children sit. I could tell you it felt different that morning. It did not. It felt like the Assumption. It smelled like wet ground and candle smoke and too many people in one room. The Gospel of the Assumption is Luke chapter 1. Mary goes to see Elizabeth, and Elizabeth says the thing about being blessed, and then Mary sings the Magnificat. My soul doth magnify the Lord. I have prayed that text every evening of my adult life, every single evening at Vespers for 37 years. There is not a text in the world I know better, and there is not a text in the world I have thought about less. You stop hearing a thing you say every day. Any priest who tells you otherwise is selling something, so I read it out. And I was reading it the way I read everything, which is well, and clearly, and with absolutely nothing behind my eyes. He hath showed strength with his arm. He hath scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. And that is where I stopped, because underneath my feet something started that I had never felt before in 63 years on a seismic island, and I have felt plenty. It did not shake first. That is the thing nobody tells you. First it dropped.
Let's stop on Saturday for a moment, because it is in background. 7.7. That's the magnitude from the United States Geological Survey. 10 kilometers deep and shallow is what does the damage. The epicenter was 68 kilometers north-northwest of the city of Ende. As of this morning, the count is at least 75 dead and 1,182 injured. Almost 60,000 people are sleeping outside. There have been more than 3,400 aftershocks, and one of them, on Monday morning, killed 2 more people. And here is the number that belongs to this particular story. 172 places of worship were damaged. 172. One more thing, and I want to be careful with it. A missionary priest reported that in another parish, a priest was handing out communion at the moment the shaking peaked, and pieces of the roof came down exactly on the altar area, and that man was not hurt. That is a real, sourced account, and it is not the man you are about to hear. Different parish, different priest, and that one walked away. If this is worth your time, take 2 seconds to subscribe and hit the bell. That's the only thing I'll ask you for. The rest of it, he tells himself.
It dropped first. I have felt earthquakes since I was a child. This island moves. Every few years something rattles the cups. What happened at 5:58 last Saturday did not begin as shaking. It began as the floor going down, the way a lift goes down, maybe 15 centimeters, all at once, and every person in that building made the same sound at the same time. Not a scream, a sort of grunt. 400 people getting hit in the stomach together. Then the shaking started. I was standing at the ambo with the book open. The book went off first, and I watched it go, and I remember thinking absurdly that I should pick it up. The candles went. The statue of Our Lady on the left came off her bracket, and I saw her go past me at about the height of my chest. I have been asked whether I told people to run. I did not. I want to be precise about that, because the version that is going around the village already has me shouting instructions, and I did not shout anything. I stood there for what I am told was about 20 seconds with my hand on the ambo, and I did not say one useful word. The people at the back got out. The doorway was already full of people who had been standing, and they went out, and they pulled others with them, and that is why the number is 4 and not 40. It was not organized. It was just that the ones near the door were near the door. I turned to look at the front, because the children sit at the front, on the floor. And then the roof came off the columns, not through the middle. It came off the tops of the columns on the eastern side, the whole slab, in one piece, and it went down like a lid going onto a pot at an angle. I did not see it land. I was face down behind the altar, and I do not remember getting there. Now I have to tell you what being under it was like. And I have to be careful because I have heard myself tell this twice already, and both times I made it more heroic than it was. I was on my stomach. My head and my right arm were in a space, a real space, maybe 40 centimeters of air, because the altar took some of the weight. Everything from the middle of my back down was under a beam that had come off the roof structure. And this is the part people do not understand. I could breathe air. There was air. What I could not do was open my chest. That is a specific thing, and I only learned the words for it afterwards, in Ruteng from a doctor. When something heavy lies across you, you do not suffocate the way you do in water. Your lungs are fine. The air is fine. You simply cannot expand your ribs, and so each breath gets a little smaller, and you spend all of your strength on the one movement. And there is a point where you understand with complete clarity that you are going to run out. It is not a panic. That surprised me. It was more like arithmetic. I was awake for almost all of it. That is the thing I would take away if I could take one thing away. I could hear them. Within a few minutes I could hear digging above me and to the left, and voices, and someone shouting for a jack, and someone praying loudly in Manggarai, and someone else telling that person to stop praying loudly and pick up a stone. At some point a man got his voice close enough to the concrete that I could hear him properly. That was Bapak Benz. He is 71 and he has one working shoulder, and he lay on the slab above me and put his mouth to a crack and talked to me for over an hour. He said, "Romo, we can hear you." He said, "Do not talk, save it, I will talk." And then he did. He told me who was out. He said the names one after another so I would know. Yuli is out. The Bupak family are out, all of them. Ibu Maria is out and she is hurt. Nando is out and he is helping. He is only 15 but he is helping. And I lay there in the dark with a beam across my back listening to a man read me a list of names. And here is the thing I did not tell anyone until Tuesday. I did not know most of them. I knew Wens, I knew Yuli, I knew the ones who did things for the church, the sacristan, the catechist, the choir, the men who fixed the generator. 20 people, maybe 25. I knew every single person who had a job. And when he said the other names, the ones who just come, who sit down and stand up and kneel and go home, I could not put a face to them. 19 years in that village, lying under my own roof, and the man was telling me who had survived, and I could not picture them. I remember being ashamed, physically ashamed, in the dark, with about a third of a breath. Then, and I could not tell you how long after, they got a jack under the eastern edge. I heard a truck. Somebody had brought a jack from a truck. I remember the pressure coming off my back, and I remember that it hurt far more coming off than it did going on. And I remember thinking, oh, now I can breathe, and I did not. That is where my memory of Saturday morning stops. What happened next, I only know because other people told me, and I am going to say it the way they said it and not add anything. Yuli is 26. She is a health worker at the village post, and she is one of the ones I baptized. She got to me before they had me all the way out, and I had no pulse. And she started compressions on the ground next to the slab, and she did not stop. There is no defibrillator in my village. There is no ambulance in my village. There is a woman of 26 who did a 2-week course in Ruteng. She did it for 14 minutes. Other people took turns on the breathing. 14 minutes. I want to say something about that number before I say the other thing, because I know which part of this people want to hear about, and I want the order to be right. 14 minutes is Yuli's number. It is not mine. Whatever else I say in the next 10 minutes, the reason I am on this chair is a 26-year-old woman with a certificate from a 2-week course who knelt in broken concrete and did not stop when it was obviously pointless. All right, now the other thing, I have to warn you that it is going to be a disappointment to some of you because I know what is expected here, and this is not that. There was no tunnel. There was no light at the end of anything. Nobody came to meet me. I was standing in my church, the old one, the wooden one, the one with the bamboo and the leaning wall and the plastic sheet on the north side, the one I tore down in 2018 and was glad to tear down. It was whole. It was standing. The wind was moving it, and it was making that sound it used to make, the one the old people called breathing. And it was full. Every bench. People at the back, people in the doorway, exactly the way it was at 10 to 6 that morning. I was standing where I always stand, and I turned around to look at them the way I have turned around 10,000 times, and I did not know a single face. I want to be careful here because that sounds like a horror story, and it was not frightening. That is the strangest part. It was not frightening at all. It was the most ordinary place I have ever been. It smelled like wet ground and candle smoke. There was light coming in the doorway behind them, and I could not look at it directly, and I am not going to describe it, and I am not going to tell you that I saw anyone standing in it, because I did not see a face, and I am not going to invent one for you. And a question was put to me. I say it that way because I do not know how else to say it. It was not a voice in my ears. It was not thunder. It arrived the way you know a thing you have just remembered. The question was, who is in the third row? That is all. That is the whole question. Not did you believe, not did you serve me, not what did you build, which is the one I had been quietly preparing an answer for since I was about 40. Who is in the third row? And I turned and I looked at the third row, and there were maybe 9 people in it, and I looked at every one of them, and I stood there in the middle of my own church, 37 years ordained, and I could not give one name. I said the only thing that came into my head, and it was the line I had not got to. He hath put down the mighty from their seats. And I understood it in completely the wrong way, which I will explain later, and which somebody has since explained to me very patiently, and I do not care. Because standing there, what the word seats meant was benches, rows, the place where people sit down in a church. And the mighty man who had been put down off his seat was me. I came back in the tray of a pickup truck, not immediately. They tell me I was breathing again on the ground next to the church, and that I said something, and nobody agrees on what it was, and I have decided not to ask any more people, because each new version is worse. The first thing I actually have is the truck. I was on my back looking up, and the sky was that flat white it goes here in the morning, and there was a blue tarpaulin over half of me, and someone's hand flat on my sternum, holding me down so I would not slide. It is 3 hours to routing on a good day. That was not a good day. A landslide had taken the road out at 2 places, and they went around on a track that is not really a road, and every time we went over something I made a noise, and a boy I did not recognize apologized each time as if it were his fault. The hospital was damaged, so the hospital was outside. I do not mean that as a figure of speech. There were beds in the car park and people on mats under an awning, and nurses walking between them in the sun. They put me on a bed in the open air, and I stayed there 3 days. A specialist came from Surabaya to look at my chest, and I said thank you in Indonesian, and he said something back in Javanese that I did not catch, and we both laughed, which was the first time I had laughed. Monday morning I was still there when the ground went again, 8:46, an aftershock. Not big, not like Saturday, but I was lying on a bed in a car park, and everyone stood up at once. 2 more people died in Nada that morning from that one. I found that out later. Monday was also the 17th of August, which is Independence Day. 81 years. There was supposed to be a flag ceremony, and there were supposed to be children in uniforms, and instead the whole country stood still for a minute of silence, and the president led it, and we did it in the car park of a broken hospital between the beds. I stood up for it. They told me not to. I stood up for it. And it was on Monday afternoon after that I asked a nurse whether there was a shop nearby that sold school notebooks. I want to explain the notebook now. Lying in that car park, I kept going back to Bapa Wins with his mouth against a crack in the concrete, reading me names. And I kept going back to standing in the old church looking at the third row. And I started thinking about paperwork. Every year I fill in returns for the diocese. Every priest does. Everywhere in the world, this is not an Indonesian problem. How many baptisms? How many first communions? How many confirmations? How many marriages? How many funerals? What the collection came to? How many attended the principal mass on an ordinary Sunday? I have filled that form in 36 times. I have been very good at it. I was praised for it once at a deanery meeting for the quality of my returns. In 36 years, nobody has ever asked me for a name. Not once. Not one time has anyone above me in this church asked me who. They asked how many. And I gave them how many, and I was proud of the how many, because the how many went up. And when your numbers go up, you are doing well. And so I learned to look at my church the way the form looks at my church. 400 at the Assumption, 210 on a wet Sunday, 9 in the third row. That is what I found out. That is all I found out. I did not come back with a message for the world. I came back knowing that I had spent 37 years counting the same people I could not name, and that I had been rewarded for it the whole time, and that nobody had ever once suggested it was a strange way to love anybody. They discharged me Tuesday. I came back on Tuesday afternoon. I had been told what it looked like, but being told is not the same. The slab is on the ground at an angle, with the columns lying under it like fallen trees. The east wall is standing. Our Lady is in 3 pieces, and they have put the pieces on a plastic chair. And someone has put a rosary over the top piece, which I find unbearable and which I have not touched. They have a blue tarpaulin up between 2 posts. And that is the church now. We said Mass under it Tuesday evening, 50 or 60 people. I sat down for the whole thing because I cannot stand for that long yet. On Wednesday morning, the district brought the list. 4 people from my parish died inside that building. 4. Given that there were 400 of them, that number is a kind of miracle, and I am not going to use that word about it, because the 4 are not a rounding error, and one of them was somebody's mother. 3 of the 4 I knew. One of them was the man who fixed our generator, and I could have told you his wife's name and both his sons. The 4th name I did not know. It was a woman, 68 years old, and I asked, and Yuli told me, and I want to say the sentence exactly as Yuli said it, because Yuli did not know she was hitting me. She said, "Romo, of course you know her. She sits on the left. 3rd row, every day, not just Sundays, Romo, every day at 6. Her name was Ibu Petronella. She had been coming to a 6 o'clock Mass every morning, in the 3rd row on the left, for 19 years, which means that woman looked at me and listened to me roughly 6,000 times. And I would have said, if you had asked me on Friday, that I knew my parish very well. So that is the notebook. I started it on Tuesday night with a pen from the hospital. It is not a project, it is not a program, and I am not going to write a book about it, and I would be grateful if nobody from the diocese calls me about it. It is a list of the people in this village, every one of them, name, house, who they belong to. The first page has 4 names on it, and it is the only page I wrote from memory. I am at 215. The village is about 900 people, At the rate I am going, I will finish sometime in October, and I am 63 years old, with a chest that is going to hurt for a year, so I would rather not be interrupted. Now 2 things and then I will let you go. The first one is the one I have been asked 11 times in 5 days, and the answer is no. I was not chosen. Nobody picked me. There were 4 people in that building who did not come back, and 3 of them were better than me. And if you take away from this that God pulled Romo Cornelis out and left them, then I have made a mess of telling it, and you should stop the video. I do not know why I came back. I know that a jack came off a truck and a woman knelt in the rubble for 14 minutes. That is the entire mechanism I am aware of. The second thing is about the building. People keep asking whether we will rebuild. The bishop's office rang on Tuesday to ask what we need, and I said I did not know, and they thought I was being difficult. I do not know if I will rebuild. I honestly do not. I know that I put a concrete roof on a wooden church because I wanted these people to have something permanent, and I meant that, and I would do it again with better columns. But I also know that the building I was standing in on Saturday, on the other side, was the leaky one. That is what was full. That is where the 3rd row was. Make of that what you like. I have made nothing of it yet. That is everything. I am going to go back to the notebook now, because the light goes at 6 and there is no power in this village, and there has been no power for 5 days. If you pray, and you might not, pray for Ibu Petronella, who sat in the 3rd row every morning for 19 years, and for the 3 others. And find out the name of somebody who sits near you. That is all I have got. Thank you for listening to an old man in a plastic chair.
There is one line Father Cornelis keeps coming back to, and I want to put it in its place before we finish. The line he never got to read is Luke chapter 1, verse 52. In the King James it goes, "He hath put down the mighty from their seats, and exalted them of low degree." He heard the word seats, and he thought about the pews in his church. I have to tell you that he is wrong. In the Greek, those are thrones. It is a song about kings being pulled down off thrones. It is not about the seating in a village church, and any priest with 37 years on him knows that. So let's say plainly what this text does not say. It does not say that an earthquake is a punishment, or a message, or a call. 75 people died on Saturday doing nothing except getting up, getting dressed, and going to Mass. And anyone who turns that into a lesson has understood nothing. It does not say that concrete is pride and wood is humility. He built a roof he believed would stand for 100 years. That is not a sin. That is a man trying. And it does not say that a priest who cannot name the people in the 3rd row has wasted 37 years. What the text does say is that God takes people down off the seat they are sitting on. That part is in there. He just read it in the wrong building, at the wrong time, and about himself. And it is possible that reading it wrong is the only reason a 63-year-old man is sitting in the wreck of his own church this afternoon with a school notebook. One last thing about the ground itself. That fault has 2 halves. The eastern half broke in 1992. It killed around 2,080 people, and it sent a wave 26 meters up the shore. The western half had never broken. It waited 34 years, and on Saturday morning, it broke. Father Cornelis has not gone back to the bishop. He has not asked to be moved. He is sitting in front of what is left of his church, and he is up to 215 names. If you made it this far, subscribe and tell me in the comments the name of one person who sits near you every week and whose name you have had to ask for twice. Take care of yourselves.